Alright, so I want to talk about this whole Jon Jones retirement before I don't have the chance to do so, because this whole thing is just disappointing. First things first, Jon Jones retiring from MMA 100% has to do with Tom Aspinall. And there are a couple of things I need to say. One, he 100% ducked Tom Aspinall. And before Jones' fanboys come at me for saying this, I'm gonna break this down for you. Jones has never avoided anybody else the way he has avoided Aspinall. He never dismissed any of his previous opponents or spoke about him in the way that he spoke about Tom Aspinall. He spent so much time trying to belittle Aspinall, and that shows how much Jon Jones knew how much of a threat Aspinall really was to him. He's the champ, you're the world champ, and the fact that you won't even acknowledge him after speaking so highly about him initially, it shows that Jones knows that Aspinall can really hurt him in a potential matchup. Secondly, people are saying Jones already made up his mind about retirement after fighting Stipe Miocic. Yes, that would be the case if they had initially fought on UFC 295, but they didn't. The fight fell through, and that means Jones doesn't have to fight Stipe. Matter of fact, he shouldn't have. He should have defended against the interim champ. He, as the champion, should have fought the next best guy up, but no, he decided to continue to pursue the Stipe fight for no reason. If he was all about legacy and furthering his GOAT campaign, a win against Aspinall would have done way more for his career than against a 40-year-old, 4-year inactive Stipe that was straight toast in the fight. The fight was not competitive at all. It was an exhibition. Stipe didn't even win an exchange, let alone a round, and he retired immediately after fighting you. Now this next thing that I'm about to say is my favorite one because it's the one thing that Jones's fans keep on repeating over and over again because Jon Jones himself keeps recycling this argument over and over again. He keeps saying that he's beaten all these up-and-comers before and Aspinall is no different, therefore why should he have to do it again? If this isn't the biggest form of deflection, then I don't know what is. I'm sorry, but nobody cares what you did yesterday because it's in the past. It no longer exists. You can't live in that moment anymore. You did what you did back then, you got credit for it, now move on. It's that simple. What you did yesterday doesn't account for what you have to do today. Everything that I did yesterday, it means nothing because I have to do it all again today. And as long as you're the champion, you have to fight the best. It's that simple. That's what this is all about. Because I don't think anyone here doubts who Jones is, right? Most people refer to him as the MMA GOAT. So this has never been about quote-unquote proving yourself to anybody because most people already acknowledge you. That's why for people who keep saying, what does Jon Jones have to prove? Well, he has to prove nothing because people acknowledge him as the greatest of all time. It's just he's the heavyweight champion and he just has to defend the title. I seen this clip of Kamaru Usman talking about how as a champ, they make you fight all these contenders and you keep beating them all one by one and it's quote unquote never enough. And he asked the question, at what point does it end? And it seems like Jon Jones is also writing that same idea in this case. And guess what? Newsflash, it never ends. As long as you're the champion, you have an obligation to fight the best. You have the one thing that most fighters have dreamed of competing for. You have been in that position before where you had to climb up the rankings to fight the champion. So now that you're the champion, you better repay that opportunity back to the people coming up. It's like me living life and saying, at what point do I stop dealing with problems? At what point do I stop suffering? And it's kind of like, as long as you're alive, it's never going to end. But you want to know what's the saddest thing about all of this? Jones went to the highest extent to avoid Aspinall at all costs, when the whole time it was a matchup he could win. Jones was never in a position where he had no chance of beating Aspinall. It's just that if they were scheduled to fight, he wouldn't be favored. That's it. But he certainly has the tools and the skill set to actually offset certain things in Aspinall's game. Truthfully, it would have been a beautiful matchup. It probably would have been one of the best matchups in the last few years in the UFC. But one thing I couldn't stand was just how long he dragged out his retirement talk. For months after his fight with Stipe, everyone and their mama knew Aspinall would be next. Aspinall was public about how he and the UFC tried to pursue that fight and they met all of Jones's demands. Yet this man was never clear on his decision. He never gave the UFC and the public a clear answer. He then proceeds to go on the Nelk Boys podcast and starts his statement by saying he doesn't want to say he's retired, but literally the next line he says, I could care less about fighting. Huh? How does that make any sense? Genuinely. And if he couldn't care less about fighting, why did he just not vacate the belt? If you are totally unsure about your future and what you want to do, why didn't you just let it go? Because there's people in your division that is ready to compete for it. But no, you were just holding onto the title and making it all about yourself. It was like he knew he didn't want to fight Aspinall, and because he had developed this stigma of not wanting to fight him from the public, in order to get back at Aspinall and the public without having to actually fight him, he chose to be 1 foot in and 1 foot out on purpose to intentionally tease Aspinall and the public. All for him to just waste everyone's time, which is exactly why his retirement was a straight letdown. It should have been something more. It should have been something we remembered for the right reasons. And unfortunately, it's just not.